Welcome to the Backfield Buzz podcast, a part of the Hive Podcast Network. Cody Wiles, Logan Glover, Andrew Foster, as always, are here continuing on with our division previews. It's AFC South time. And of course, none of us have any bias here or anything.
I don't know what you're talking
Obviously,
about.
clearly.
Obviously
uh,
not.
so this is the seventh out of the eight divisions that we have done. If you want to go take a look at all of the NFC and the AFC North and East, go check the channel. Please subscribe and like the video if you like it. Before we get into anything, Glover, how you doing?
I'm doing good, I got a full night's rest last night, and
I'd
I'm ready to
say.
go to the AFC South. I've got some questionable stuff in here. I was looking at this a little before the episode prepping. I'm not sure if I fully agree with me a month ago when I made this, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, for anybody who wants to know, Glover's sleep schedule is very
It's bad.
wonky.
It's bad.
He woke up at what, 2:30
It,
today
it was
or
a bad day
whatever.
today. Today was not a good day for me.
It was about 2:30, yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Uh
it was one of those nights where you're sitting in your bed, you're watching TV, and you're like, the next episode just auto plays. You're like, oh well, it's too good, I can't stop now. I'm just finishing this episode.
yeah, Frosty was having a beer before Glover woke up, but Frosty, how you doing?
I'm you mentioned I was having a beer. I had my beer league softball today. Hopefully I can contribute a little bit more to this podcast than I did to the game because I did absolutely nothing. Um,
What
you
position
know,
do you
we'll,
play? What position do you play on the
I'm
team?
I'm I'm a center fielder.
Okay,
I play
okay.
I play with a bunch of 50-year-olds, so I'm the most mobile out of everybody out
Fair
there.
enough. That's fair enough.
Where are you hitting in the lineup?
Hitting the 5 hole.
Ooh, okay.
I'm not bottom of the barrel. I'm not bottom of the
There we
barrel.
If the
go.
Jays need a bat, man, they're selling house.
Just do need a bat.
You want a speedy outfielder? I got you.
Perfect. Well, we're not talking baseball today, fellas. We are talking football, and we are going to start this conversation with the Tennessee Titans, where I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts because this looks like it's going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Glover, where did you agree with that sentiment, or do you think they're a bit
Well,
higher?
I'm happy you said that because I was really worried going into this that I was going to be the outlier in my Titans predictions. So we'll see that when we get there. But like they had a solid offseason. I was looking through it, I was making the graphics and looking through the additions and subtractions they made. It's pretty solid. They added some really good pieces across the board. I don't really know how it's all going to mesh. Firing Mike Vrabel was questionable. Like I don't know what they were doing there. He was one of the best coaches in the league. I can't believe he didn't get a job. He must have. I think he didn't want to go right back into a head coaching job if I was him. But yeah, this team is solid, but they're going to go as far as Will Levis takes them, and I don't know how much faith I have in him. But again, it's a solid team. There's some obvious holes, and I'm not really sure where like I'm really low on them, but at the same time, I can see a world where I'm proven very wrong on the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. When I made these predictions, I had them. They're pretty bad. They're pretty bottom of the barrel in my predictions. But yeah, like you said, looking at the additions and subtractions that they had, I think this team got better.
Yeah.
Even I I like Tony Pollard a lot. As a Cowboys fan, I know that he's not going to be effective in a bell cow role, but he's not in that role anymore. Now they got Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard back there. That's when Tony Pollard he keeps his explosiveness when he's not playing every single play when he gets a little bit of time off the field. That's going to help them a lot. But I think a lot lower on Will Levis than a lot of people are. I really don't see how he's going to help lead this team to wins. I think most of their wins are probably going to be because of the run game, and they do have a really good receiver room though. That's the thing is I think that can help elevate Levis a lot.
They have a good receiver room, but the other thing with the run game, if they rely on that, the O-line isn't going to hold up in a run game, in a run-heavy offense. That's the biggest hole, is that O-line is ugh.
There's a difference between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears and Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears.
Yeah, Derek Carr can make an O-line look pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what, as like I said, we'll get to the predictions, but they they're in a weird spot where I feel like a lot of people thought they should maybe be taking a step back and acquire younger assets and kind of retool a little bit. But this offseason, they really went out and added veterans all across the board to really try and compete. Sticking offensively, I think, yeah, the conversation has to start with Will Levis, right? I think a lot of this is how good you think the milkman, or not the milkman, what's the
Mayo
mayo
Man.
man, the
Mayo
mayo
man,
man, and the what else does he do? Or does he just put the mayo in
The mayo and the
co
coffee. I think he eats
mayo and
banana
coffee.
peels.
Yeah, he eats bananas with the peel.
There was something else too, but yeah, he's an interesting guy.
So, with that aside, let's just talk about his quarterback play. Uh, I think he showed stuff. Like, I think he showed real good stuff in his, I believe it was 9 games with the Titans last year. Over 1,800 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions in 9 games isn't nothing to sniff at or to snuff at. Under 60% completion percentage is not what you'd like to see, and that's kind of his game, right? He was just taking shots all over the field and really just trying to figure it out. Um, but yeah, this offensive line is it's going to be interesting to see how it holds up for him because I think this is where the offense is going to crumble. I like JC Latham. He was my tackle too. I had him over Fashanu. Um, Skaronski, we'll see how he looks. Outside of that, you're betting on some guys who have been average at best to take a step. But yeah, you mentioned the receiving room. What are you getting out of Treylon Burks this year, guys? Because they've went out and supplemented this receiver room to where is he even? He's like receiver 4 now. No,
Yeah, and I think there was talks of him playing on kick return and punt return teams to as a gunner to earn his spot on the starting lineup, which is crazy for a guy you traded AJ Brown for basically straight up. Like that's brutal. That was your guy. I wasn't a big fan of Burks over some of the other receivers on the board at that time. And he's been injury prone. He hasn't been able to really find a spot with his offense. And you add D Hop last year, you add Calvin Ridley this year, you add Tyler Boyd this year. Nick Westbrook-Akine is probably out snapping him right now. Like that's a tough spot to be in. If I was him, I'd be looking for a fresh start somewhere else because I don't think he's going to get anything here unless injuries come back to bite these veteran receivers.
Yeah, I really think the only way that he gets any kind of role or consistent role in this offense is if he plays himself into it or somebody plays themselves out of a role. One guy I do want to touch on though is their tight end, Chigozie Okonkwo. I love him. I
Chig.
think he's I absolutely love him. I think he's got top 10 tight end upside.
Yeah.
I think he's so good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Chig Okonkwo is. I was gonna bring him up, but you beat me to it. I think we all. I think everybody. I think it's a
Like him.
widely like recognized like
Yeah.
that he's on the come up. But yeah, Treylon Burks played in 11 games his first 2 years. Didn't have a touchdown last year. Had one touchdown his rookie year. He only had 30 targets last season. He only made 16 catches, 221 yards. Like I didn't realize it was this bad until I went and looked at it. But man, lots of things to figure out there. But yeah, I mean, they brought in Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, so we'll see how it looks. I like Tajay Spears. I'm gonna be honest, guys. I think he's a very I think he can be one of the best like complementary backs in the league. Do you guys not feel that way as well?
I really thought when they let Derrick Henry go, they were just going to run a Tajay Spears led backfield and pick up a 1B to go behind him like a backup kind of guy and spend the money elsewhere. They weren't cap strapped after releasing Ryan Tannehill, so they were able to sign big money for Tony Pollard and also go out and get a lot of the big names they picked up this offseason. But I was a little surprised they didn't just run Tajay Spears because I think he could be a starting back in this league.
I agree. I like a lot of what I've seen from Spears. I think they were a little bit concerned about kind of what we saw happen with Tony Pollard last year with the Cowboys might have happened with Spears this year because he was so effective as a 1B when every time that you're touching the ball, you're completely fresh. You're not getting worn down during the game because you have Derrick Henry. I do like the move still. I like having the two backfield with Pollard and Tajay Spears because I think they can both be really, really effective in that role.
I will say I usually like backfields when there's a bit of a thunder and lightning kind of thing. Like that's why I was really loving the Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears because Spears really came in and provided a different sort of play style. Tony Pollard's a bit more similar to Spears than a Derrick Henry, obviously. So we'll see how that dynamic works with Spears coming in now for a similar style back that defenses prepare for. Let's go to the Titans defense now, however, where They made some real additions, to be honest, guys. And I don't know what this unit is going to look like. They were a decent unit last year. Um, but I mean, I want to start with L'Jarius Sneed because this guy was one of the best corners in all of football. And I think he kind of was putting it on a little bit towards the end and really saying, like, hey, this guy's you could argue like he's pushing top five corner in my book. So, what do you guys think of this defense? Because they made some additions.
Yeah, like
For L'Jarius Sneed, I want to see what he looks like outside of the Chiefs system. Because that was a very, very good defense last year. Trent McDuffie was with him, who was another elite corner last year. I do think L'Jarius Sneed is very, very good. I think he's at least probably a top 15 corner. I don't know if he's as good as the numbers said last year, just because of how elite the rest of the defense was around him and how good of a DC that he had in Kansas City as well.
that is the thing I'll say with the Titans is last year the defense was their weakness. This year the defense definitely got better. I mean, there was a lot of good pickups. It's still a weakness. Like it's still not a great defense in my books. I like the Jarius Sneed. It's a good pickup. Chidobe Awuzie on the other side, another good pickup. And I want to see what you can get out of Caleb Farley and Roger McCreary. I like them both coming out in the draft process. But the safeties, very questionable. The linebackers are rough. And the pass rush last year, like, well, you gotta hope it's better than this year, but last year it was bad. Like last year they had no pass rush at all. It was Harold Landry who had 10 and a half sacks. Danico Autry had 11 and a half. Jeffrey Simmons missed time, and then Arden Key had 6 sacks. There was no pressure on this D line. Like you gotta hope a guy like Tavondre Sweat can come in and play an impact. Sebastian Joseph Day, because they did lose Danico Autry. So they lost their top sack getter last year. The pass rush is going to be tough, and that's going to be a big for a guy like L'Jarius Sneed. Another reason why he had maybe better numbers in Kansas City than you would expect here. They had a great pass rush. George Karlaftis was dominating. Chris Jones was dominating. Every level that KC defense had playmakers. This Titans defense does not have that many playmakers. It's got, in my opinion, it's got three, maybe four playmaking kind of guys in Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, and L'Jarius Sneed. It's a step back for Snead. So we'll see what he can do, but he's gonna have a lot more responsibility here in Tennessee.
I think I would still throw Jamal Adams in as a playmaker.
I don't know how much you're gonna get out of Jamal Adams though. Like I don't know if he's gonna play much. He's not even listed as their starting safety right now. He's injury prone. I don't know. We'll see what we get. If you get a good Jamal Adams, I can see that, but
You don't think he
I don't
starts?
see him.
Who would you have starting over Adams? Because it looks like I would have Jamal
I would
Adams.
start him.
Who do you think is competing? You said you don't think
Well,
he's listed as a starter?
right now he's listed as the second strong safety behind Amani Hooker. I'd start him over Hooker or Elijah Molden, their starting free safety. But right now he's not listed there. It's not a difficult job for him to grab. I don't trust Jamal Adams to stay healthy. And his numbers took a hit during his time in Seattle. They just weren't as good as they were in New York.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, so it came out that Jamal Adams left Seattle because they wanted to play him at linebacker, and ironically, the Titans could use him as a middle linebacker right now with Hooker and Molden being a solid little pairing there. Yeah, I think you guys touched on the whole defense as a whole. I mean, they had some losses, made some additions. The secondary definitely looks like the strongest a part of to me at least. We'll see what the D line looks like. I don't like the linebackers. Especially we'll get to a big loss that they had, Aziz Al-Shaair, who I think is super underrated. And that's not trying to be biased because I thought this when he was playing against the Texans, but I think that wraps up. Anything else on the Tennessee Titans?
The only thing I want to point out is Will Levis, uh, after his first game, had 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in 8 games. So when the record comes out for what I have them at, that's why.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
Just keep that in mind. Not a big Will Levis fan club over here. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move over to the Indianapolis Colts, where Man, another interesting team to me because I have trouble figuring out what this team is going to be. There's so much unknown with these guys, beginning at the quarterback position, with Anthony Richardson. I think I'd be shocked if either of you guys disagreed. I think we all liked what we saw from A Rich, uh, before he went down with, I believe it was the shoulder injury, right? So what do we? Let's start on the offense here because he's going to have a fantastic offensive line. This offensive line is great. I love it. And he's got a couple weapons around him as well, as of course with Jonathan Taylor beside him. So Frosty, I guess what are your thoughts on A-Rich and this offense as a whole?
I I like it. I think the Colts offense can be really, really good. I can think it can be really, really dynamic. I think at its peak, this is a top five offense. Realistically, they have a lot of guys that can go out and make plays. I love the wide receiver trio of Michael Pittman Jr., AD Mitchell, and Josh Downs. Josh Downs was so good as a rookie last year. AD Mitchell fell in the draft to them. I I think this offense has a lot of guys that can go out and make plays, and the O line helps so much. A Rich is the definition of a dual threat quarterback. He can run and pass. If the O line breaks down, he can save them with his legs. I I find it hard. I almost have to look for ways that this offense cannot succeed. And the main way that I see it not succeeding is the health of Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I think this offense has got a lot of weapons. If I were to look at this team, like the offense and the team as a whole, I think they'll be in the playoff race this year. I think they're a year away though from being back in the playoffs. I think it'll take a year, a full, because they haven't gotten a full season of Anthony Richardson meshing with these receivers and this O line and these running backs and getting the whole team kind of together. There's gonna be some growing pains. The biggest thing, if I'm Shane Steichen, I am stopping the power runs with Anthony Richardson. Stop. Like, it's not going to work. You can't run your quarterback down the middle of the field. You can't just run him behind your center and hope he goes somewhere. You have to let your running back that you paid a ton of money to run that role. Richardson will be great running read options, running to the outside, running scramble plays. He's got a cannon of an arm. Use it. Stop forcing him on QB sneaks with 3 yards to go. Like, that's why he got injured. He was diving shoulder first into so many plays. I don't like that for Richardson, especially with the injury history. So I'd keep it simple. I wouldn't throw him into these risky spots, and you should be a healthy team. I'm on board with you. I love AD Mitchell. I think that was a great pick. There was a bit of character concerns, but the Colts GM was quick to sort of blow that off as just BS, as he said. So I like AD Mitchell. I think he's going to thrive in this offense. He's been amazing at training camp so far. He's just been a standout guy. And even the receiver four, I liked Alec Pierce as a rookie. His role was a little reduced last year, but
Yeah.
I think he's still a solid receiver. The O line's good. Jelani Woods at tight end is a freak
I
of
was just
nature.
gonna say Jelani Woods, yeah.
He's massive. Like that guy is just an absolute unity. 6'7", 253. Like he was injured this year, but I think he's going to be a breakout candidate for this team. This offense is really talented. The defense is also talented. This team will be competitive. I think health will determine how competitive.
I wonder. I don't know if reading into the Joe Flacco pickup is something about their confidence in Anthony Richardson, or if it's just they're trying to get a because they don't have another veteran in that quarterback room. So I think it might be more so to that. To be honest with you, I did want to push back a little bit, Glover, on the power runs with A Rich. I mean, that's yes, you don't want him taking unnecessary hits, but that's just kind of that, like you're taking away his superpower then if you're trying to do something
I
like that, right? Like you would know specifically from being a Ravens fan, like this Colts team, they need to be looking at what the Ravens have been doing because if you can have potentially this Colts duo of Richardson and Taylor could be all like no the second most dynamic
yeah.
partnership there outside of Henry and Lamar. And the Ravens have managed Lamar to some degree.
I do agree, but I think the big thing, the Ravens don't run Lamar up the middle. They never have, they never will. They always run to the outside. I think a better sort of comparable is to the way Josh Allen runs. Anthony Richardson has elusiveness, but he is more powerful than Lamar, but not as elusive as Lamar. So like Josh, and he's got an arm like Josh Allen. Like that's the sort of way. And even the Bills, Josh Allen's a power guy. They don't run him up the middle. It's just dangerous running it. Like your quarterback isn't built for that, and you lose your quarterback, you might be toast. I I would again, if the play call calls for it, if it's a situation that calls for it, you can run it. But I think you look to run it outside. Look for read options. I think there was too many just designed for up snap to Richardson. He runs. Read option it. Make the defenders not just fully commit to Richardson. Make it so they have to make a decision. And sometimes make the wrong decision opens up holes and allows Richardson to get into space where he then is
So
at less risk of getting injured. He can slide, he can get out of contact.
I still want him to be doing QB draws though. I want him to be like, how often do the Ravens use Lamar as a on QB draws?
Never. They don't run QB draw. They run read option, RPOs, and it's scrambling. Lamar very rarely has run plays where he's just running straight down the middle. It's always to the outside because that's where he dominates. When he gets into open field, that's when Lamar is going to make his magic happen. He's not going to do much running nose first into a nose tackle. He's just going to get stopped.
Frosty, what do you think? Because to me, it just seems like I want him. Like I think, yes, you're putting him in a vulnerable spot. I think it was just a little bit of an unfortunate injury because I do want this guy running up the middle. I don't want him taking hits, but that's where he can make plays.
It is like he's 6'4", 245.
He's
Like
a
Anthony
unit.
Richardson is not a small dude. This
No,
guy is massive. I do I would definitely cool it a little bit on the inside runs. I wouldn't have him doing like more than like two, maybe three a game. And the rest of the time, like it's not just because he is a different runner than Lamar, like he's more powerful than Lamar. That doesn't mean he's also not as dynamic when he's in open field. So I'm fine with them if they want to run 2, 3, 4 QB draws a game, that's fine. You don't need all your quarterback runs to be that though. You have to run him to the outside as well. And then I think that's going to also open up more space. And then he'll take less hits on the inside because teams are going to have to commit to the outside run more with him, anyways.
that's really what it is. It's not that they have to completely disband the idea of running the QB draw because he can run it. He's a physical specimen. But when you're running that kind of play 6, 7 times a game on goal line situations, you're just getting destroyed. Like it hurts. And when that's not what you're built for, when you're not playing, like that's not what you practice for. You're not a running back. And that's the biggest thing for me is it's like you have Jonathan Taylor. You have no need to make Anthony Richardson your guy to run down the middle. QB sneaks, that's fine, but he's lining up in shotgun and then drawing. Like that's you're building up a lot of speed and it's a head-on collision with another 300-pound man. So that's what Jonathan Taylor is there for. They like the Ravens, that was Gus Edwards. When it was a goal line to go situation, Gus Edwards ran it. Pat Ricard ran it. I think it's just picking and choosing your spots more delicately and not going as often and letting him work outside. Because when you want to read option with Anthony Richardson, and there's options of him going down the middle, and you got to pay attention for that, him cutting to the outside, pay attention for that, or handing it off to Jonathan Taylor, that's so much more dynamic than just snapping it and running down the middle. You're going to get more results out of that.
Yeah, for sure. He's gonna have more runway to do that, right? So
Yeah.
maybe they were just starting to get into the playbook or whatever. They were still doing stuff like that, but I think they just wanted to see what all Richardson can do. Anything else on these guys?
I just want to say, I feel like more so than Lamar, I think a better comparable for Anthony Richardson is Cam Newton on the Panthers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another big, powerful guy that's just a dominant athlete. And he did kind of the same thing. He was like, he ran up the middle. He did because he's a physical specimen, but they also utilized him with Christian McCaffrey, using defenses, using CMC to fake out defenses and get Newton in space. He's not running into a nose tackle. He might run into a linebacker, but he's a pretty good size matchup for a linebacker. He's not a good size matchup for a nose tackle.
Yeah, and I think those are the better. Everyone's so quick to go rushing quarterback. It's Lamar Jackson. Anthony Richardson is not Lamar Jackson. He's got the elusiveness for sure, but he's got a cannon of an arm and he's a more physical, bigger guy. Josh Allen, Cam Newton, those are better comparables. The one though, I can't remember the play it happened on. It might have been just a sack, but Newton also suffered a serious shoulder injury that kind of
Mhm.
ruined his career. So it's like
Yeah.
it's the risk. You got to value the risk reward on certain plays. That's what the Colts are going to have to learn. It's what the Ravens have had to learn. The Bills have had to learn it. All these teams have had to learn that sort of thing.
To be clear, I wasn't comparing Anthony Richardson to Lamar
No,
Jackson.
no.
I was
It's
genuinely asking like what kind of because I'm not
yeah.
watching all
Mhm.
the dynamism week in and week out like
Yeah.
you are in that backfield. Let's move over to this defense really quickly because I like it. I think it's young. I think they got legs with them. Something I just want to shout out right at the top. Julius Brents. I have to go find like my rankings from that year, from 2023. I was high on him. I loved him. And it's just you just love that validation when you like when you're high on somebody and they just hit, right? And when it's a bit one of those like sleeper kind of guys. Uh Frosty, what do you think of this defense?
I think I'm a good amount lower on this defense than most
Interesting.
people.
Okay,
I
okay.
think this was a team that was bottom five in the league in points against last year. They didn't make a ton of changes on defense. I think their pass rush got better. Latu is going to help a ton with their pass rush with DeForest Buckner. I just I just think there's nothing that stands out to me on this defense right now. There's nothing that I think I can rely on consistently going in, game out, that they're going to go in and win their positional battles.
I think there's one.
What do you think there is?
I think the interior of the D line is I think it's going to be hard to run on these guys up the middle. Uh
I
and
was I was gonna go elsewhere. I think Zaire Franklin is a guy who can win his matchup all the time. He's a great linebacker.
I mean, I don't mind EJ Speed either.
Yeah, I like EJ Speed too.
I know.
Like
So okay, Glover. So I
I'm
think you're a bit more on my
yeah,
wavelength with this Colts
I
defense.
I'm more on your side there, Wiles. I think this defense is really solid.
Kenny Moore is a good player.
I love Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore is really good. This cornerback room needs more depth because Juju Brents, like you mentioned, he's solid. Kenny Moore is solid.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot behind them. So they need a little more depth there. But I like the linebacker room. They're running Ronnie Harrison Jr. too in sort of that outside linebacker rover position. He's not really playing safety with them. And, EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin. And I loved the Leatu Latu pick. I liked Kwity Paye coming out. He hasn't really broken out yet, but he's shown flashes. DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart are really solid. Samson Ebukam was solid last year
Yep.
too. This defense is really solid.
I don't mind Nick Cross either
I
as
don't mind
a
Nick Cross.
at free.
Julian Blackman was really good as a rookie. I loved him as a rookie. He hasn't really gotten back to that point yet, but it's there. So like this defense has a lot of talent. I think depth is really where they need to shore up. They need a little bit of depth if injuries start to beat them up. Not a lot of backup linebackers available. Not a lot of corners available. The D line probably has the most depth because you can throw in Raekwon Davis or Leatu Latu.
But
And
it's
still,
that's
it's
not
not
saying
great.
much. I see I could see where you're at, Frosty, where it's like I guess there's no I don't know. Would you consider anybody like a game changer? Like you're not considering anybody a game
No,
changer on this
No.
defense.
no.
I guess I just like a whole bunch of guys to take a step or where they're at right now. Like, but I see where you're at, Frosty, where it's like they're young, plus there's not really a lot of depth.
Yeah, like I think I now I think the defense is going to be the weak point of this team pretty easily, but I also think their offense, if their defense can be league average, I think their offense can win them games pretty consistently, game in, game out. But it's this I don't know if I put my faith in this defense to be league average. I still think this is arguably I think it's a bottom 10 unit in the league.
I think they could be league average. I think that's a solid. Like I think that's where they'd land again. I think the big thing is a little bit of lack of depth. And as much as Kenny Moore and Zaire Franklin and DeForest Buckner are really good players, they do lack that superstar, like you could throw this guy into all pro team kind of players. Like none of those guys are making an all pro team. None of those guys are really gonna like carry your defense. That is the one thing they lack, but it's a lot of really solid pieces across the board. But depth and a lack of a superstar might be what hurt this team.
I meant to ask you this while we were talking when we were talking about Anthony Richardson, but just because I think a lot of the conversation starts with him, and I think a lot of people like him, to be honest, and I think people are excited for him. So I wanted to throw you guys the lines here and see what you guys thought. So A Rich's passing yards line over or under 3,150 yards.
Let me do some quick math here. Wait.
So that would be 3,150 divided by 17. What is that?
It's a good line.
What
Uh
is it?
oh, I'm just looking at what he had last year. Like he had last year, he had
Oh,
500 in 4 games.
he had 504 games.
Like
They're gonna be
even nearly
that's
600 in 4 games.
that
It's a really good
line's
line.
185 a game.
So
That
yeah,
line's 185.
185 a game.
Yeah.
I
185.
I
Yeah.
take that over. I think I take that over.
It's a Frosty, what do you think?
I think I take the over too because I think they're gonna slowly start to phase Jonathan Taylor out of this offense.
That's
I think
a
I think
that's a,
I
it's
think I
interesting.
think I just think the time's come. Clearly he doesn't want to be there anymore. I think it's mutual. I don't think he wants to be there. I don't think the team wants to be there. I think slowly they start to phase him out of the offense. It
So
won't be quick. I like Trey Sermon. I do. I like Trey Sermon as a backup running back a lot.
at least specifically for this passing prop, like because that's the thing, like they could be phasing Taylor out, but Richardson's gonna run a lot too. And
That is
so
true.
the rushing prop is 525 over
Over.
under for the season.
Over.
Ooh,
Way
over.
over.
Okay, so you guys would feel more comfortable
Oh
betting
yeah.
on
The other thing I do want to circle back to though is like so looking at his passing numbers. The line what 135 a game or what was it 175 a game?
185 a game.
185
185
a
a
game.
game. So he had 577 yards in 4 games played last year. In 2 of those games, he threw the ball less than 12 times. Like he had a 223-yard game and a 200-yard game. And then a game where he went 6 for 10 for 56 yards and 9 for 12 for 98 yards. The 6 for 10 game, he got hurt in that game. So he really played 3.5 games and had 577 yards. I think I'd take the over on that. I think I'm a little more comfortable in looking at that.
Is 4,500 all-purpose yards for him out of the question?
No,
I don't think it is.
he's got the weapons.
I think 4,500 rushing plus passing yards. I think that's around where he finishes if he plays a full season.
We'll
Yeah,
see. You got I think you got to be on a bit higher end for that because I mean
Yeah.
that is quite a bit for somebody who only played like 3.5 or 3 and 3/4 games or whatever it was. But he
Yeah.
did look good. So real quick, do you think Jaden Daniels' rushing prop for the season is over or is higher than A Rich's or lower?
I would say it
Akers
would
just
be
wasn't very high.
higher.
I
I
think
would
it'll
think
be
it'd be
higher
higher.
because Daniels relies more on his legs than A-Rich does.
It's actually the exact same.
Huh.
Really?
So yeah, they are, I believe, tied for second for the line when it comes to that. Lamar Jackson in first with 675 as the line, and then Lamar
Really?
six. Would you go over?
Absolutely.
I'd have to see how many he's had per year,
I
but
want to just double check what he had last year under the less rushing offense. Oh, where is it at?
we have to start
He had
incorporating.
821 last year in a more pass-heavy offense. Give me that line over all day.
Well, we might have
It's that
to.
bet right now.
We have to do some betting stuff. Maybe we'll see in the future. Um, but yeah, I guess that does it for the Colts. I don't know, I kind of like throwing in the lines. It's interesting, especially when it really matters. Like I could do the same for Will Levis, but it's like I think this Colts team is a bit more ready to like take a jump than Tennessee right
Yeah.
now. And I think a lot of people like A Rich over Will Levis. So
Yeah. I would hope so.
Yeah, because he's better.
over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as a Texans fan, this is going to be a very fun conversation because people are finally, this is something I've been talking about for 2 years, man. This team is not it. Like they're just people keep thinking they're gonna make a jump, and they never do. That all kind of starts with Trevor Lawrence, which we'll get into. But I'm interested to think what you guys think. Like, do you guys is this the year you guys have them making the jump, or are they just again going to be another under 10 win team?
From what I gather, the Jacksonville Jaguars are your Pittsburgh Steelers for me. Because every year I go in and I'm like, they can't be 9-8 this year. There's no way they could do it again.
And they do it.
And they do it. I think the I've definitely got the Jaguars as more than a 10 win team. Like I think they did take the jump in like when they beat the Chargers in the playoffs. That was a great year.
Remind me what year that was,
That was 2 years ago.
and what have they done since?
Look, so that's what I was gonna like. Last year wasn't great.
So they
sort of got
plateaued.
ran off.
They made the jump from shit to to like a fringe playoff team.
Yeah, I think
So
they're a
yeah,
first
I
playoff
think
team.
people are waiting for them to make a like the Texans won the division last year.
Yeah,
The Jags didn't win this division last year, which was shocking.
I think the Jags again are a fringe playoff team. They'll be in the 10 to 7 to 6 seed range. That's where I have them finishing. That's where I think it's going to be. This team is solid, kind of mid in certain spots, but like I like the Jags. I'm higher than you guys are, but I think I've got to make the playoffs. I think that's where they'll be.
See, I say all that, and I
feel
do have them making the playoffs.
Yeah.
I feel like I might be the middle ground here because I feel like Wiles is pretty low on them. It sounds like Glover's pretty high on them.
I guess. Yeah. I didn't think I was that high on them, but yeah.
I think all around they're just okay.
Yes.
Like
And Trevor Lawrence has been okay. Like
Trevor
Frosty,
Lawrence has been a turnover machine.
let's start this Trevor Lawrence conversation because this is something we were getting into a little bit just offline the other day. We were just talking about quarterbacks in general. It sparked me. We're gonna have to do some player rankings. I think we should do some positional rankings. But yeah, Frosty, open us up on this Trevor Lawrence conversation because this is where I want to start.
I mean, quite simply, he's not what he was as a prospect. He's just not. He has come in and he hasn't been able to take care of the ball. His entire career so far, he has struggled to take care of the ball. He has had one season under 14 interceptions out of his 3. And it was 2 years ago. He threw 25 touchdowns, 8 picks.
That was his best last year and 2 years ago. Yeah. He took a step down.
21 touchdowns, 14 picks.
Yeah.
And the receiver room got worse this year. To me, I'm taking Calvin Ridley over Gabe Davis. I don't know if that's a consensus. Their receiver room got worse, I think. I don't know if it's ridiculous to say that Travis Etienne is the best player on this offense. I think the offense should run through Travis Etienne. I think that's a much more reliable source of offense than Trevor Lawrence is right now because he turns the ball over so much. He had 16 turnovers last year. Like that's not.
He had 19.
He had 19 turnovers last year.
14 picks and 5 fumbles, I believe. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I see that. Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I just can't read. That's okay.
No, it's just exaggerates your point even more.
It was 7 fumbles.
Over a turnover game.
7 fumbles.
The number lost. Just keeps growing.
12 fumbles, 7 fumbles lost, along with 14 picks, so 21 turnovers.
He's getting more turnovers in the offseason. Like, I can't confidently continually put the ball in his hands until he shows me that he can take care of it. I would rather have the ball in Travis Etienne's hands than have him march down the field, milk the clock down, and get your 17-14 wins than have Trevor Lawrence at least turning the ball over once a game because he's turning it over at that rate right now anyways.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, and I'd run the offense through Travis Etienne. I think that is a smart thing to do when you have a quarterback who's been a little turnover prone in his career. But he's shown like he hasn't been what he was projected to be as a prospect, but he has shown that level of talent in games. Like, again, it's such a tough game to look at for both sides. But you look at the Chargers-Jags game. That first quarter, you take away that first quarter, which was just maybe the worst football I've ever seen a player or team play in NFL history. The 3 quarters after that, he was dominant. It was unbelievable. It's the up and down. He needs to find his balance. He needs to get comfortable. And yeah, you're right. The receiver room is definitely worse. I think Doug Peterson's going to have to change up the way he runs the offense because last year they opened the season 8-1. They then went and lost. They won 3 of their remaining 7 games or 3 of the remaining 8 games and missed the playoffs. They're hot and cold. They're very streaky. They sometimes beat good teams, but sometimes they get beat up pretty badly by good teams. Like, I really don't know what to do with the Jags. I've got them having a good year, but I can see an argument for them not having a great year. But I don't know. I'm trusting Trevor Lawrence's upside in terms of where I rank him as a quarterback, in terms of what I think he can do in this offense with this team. I have faith that he can find his stride. I think I want to give him this year. He's definitely not worth the contract he got yet, but I want to see this is kind of a make or break year. I said it when we were talking about Tua Tagovailoa. This is the year he's going to prove himself.
Here's the thing. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say just one thing. Statistically, he was a worse quarterback than Derek Carr last year.
I was just looking at a couple of quarterbacks that with Trevor Lawrence. I, it's it's interesting conversation. I do want to say the O line hasn't been there for him since he's got there. 35 sacks last year, the most he's taken. Um,
That's
there's
pretty
piece
league average, though.
there's pieces on it. Like it's not bad. Like I like Cam Robinson. The Brandon Scherf pickup was big for them.
It was big, but he has not been as good as he was in Washington and Jacksonville. He has taken a step back for
He is
sure.
not. It was still an upgrade over what they
Yeah.
had. So they bring in Mitch Morse now. We'll see what he can do. So they're continuing to build on it. This is probably the best O line he's had coming into this year. So
Probably.
to your point, Glover, like if it I think it's gonna be this year because he's got Evan Ingram there. I like Brenton Strange. He was another guy in that 23 class with Julius Brents, who I love both of them. Sucked to see them go to division rivals, but yeah, like I don't mind Brian Thomas Jr. Um, the weapon, like same thing. We were talking about another team where it was like the O line got uh the O line got better and the receiving room got a little bit worse. I think it was the Bills. Same with Josh Allen, or it might have been somebody else, but uh the weapons got worse, but the O line got better. And so it's interesting to see what that looks like for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, the what they did with the receivers just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think it was
Like,
the
do we like
biggest.
this receiving room?
Like it's so mid. If there was a receiver room that was just you want a it's this one. Like
Like, how
they
do you feel about
don't,
Brian Thomas Jr.? I think that's a lot. Like, we know what Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk are. They're
they're
on
twos.
on a championship team. Are they twos?
Yes, Christian
Gabe,
Kirk is a
Gabe,
two.
I will
Gabe Davis
stand
is a
by this.
three.
Gabe Davis is not a two.
Gabe Davis is a
Gabe
three.
Davis,
Christian Kirk's a
Okay.
two.
So they don't have
yes.
a true number one. And I think it comes down to how you feel about Brian Thomas Jr. Like, do you think he can
Can't be
be,
a one. No.
yeah,
He's
a
a great
two?
prospect, but he can be a two.
So we'll
Like they
see.
have, if I look at
But
this receiver, they have two twos and they have Gabe Davis, who I think is a three on a good team. I do like Devin Duvernay, but he's at best a three, and he's a kick returner. Like so, yeah, the receiver room is very mid. The Christian Kirk contract was questionable when they handed out. He's since the
He
he
made it
hasn't
better last year.
yeah he hasn't
Yeah.
played up to the contract per se. The receiver market's just gone up so much that his contract's now fair value. That's sort of the way I think it's gone with him.
Yeah.
I will say it helps too because Evan Ingram's probably a top five, just purely receiving tight end in
Yeah,
football.
he's been
Travis
amazing.
Etienne's a good pass catcher out of the backfield.
This should be a good
Like,
offense. Like, I like the running back room too.
should.
Like, ETN's there. Dearness
Nick
Johnson
Bigsby.
showed some good things as well. And then Tank Bigsby as well. Like, I like, so I guess like maybe they took a bit of a loss in the receiving room a little bit with Ridley, but I think like this is probably the best O line they've got. I like the running back room, so it's all there. Bringing in Mac Jones is interesting. Like I don't know if that's just like an insurance marker or it's just
I think
like
it's just
just he's
injuries
there.
happen. You gotta have a
And
back. I don't look too much
and I
into
like
stuff like
Mac Jones
that.
as a backup. I really
It's
do.
like yeah, it's like Joe Flacco with the Colts. You need to have a backup. If your quarterback goes down, you're not running CJ Beathard or Sam Ellinger. You gotta have a backup.
All right, and then real quick on this defense, any strong thoughts?
Uh,
Like I like Darnell Savage to some degree.
I like pieces. There are some
Olukun's one of the
solid
better
pieces.
underrated linebackers in the league. Uh,
It, I like looking at it. I don't know what to say again. It's pretty mediocre. I think it's got room. Like I like Josh Hines Allen. He's really good. Devin Lloyd had a good breakout year. Foye Oluokun, as you mentioned, really solid. Trayvon Walker had a much better year, sophomore season. He took a step up, which it's expected to take some time for a raw prospect.
Tyson
But
Campbell's good too. I really
yeah,
like
I was going to
Tyson
mention
Campbell.
Tyson Campbell and Andre
They just signed
Cisco.
him as well.
Andre Cisco's a great safety. Antonio Johnson. And yeah, Darnell Savage. I liked Ronald Darby in Baltimore. He was pretty solid last year. Like picked up Eric Armstead. The defense has pieces. Like there's no reason this like again, I think it probably falls into the same category as the Colts. I think this defense has more playmakers in a guy like Josh Hines Allen, but a couple more holes. So I think it'll be league average. I think that's sort of where I'd put it in. It'll be in that 14 to 17, 18 range kind of thing. Like that's where this defense will ranks among the league.
Real quick,
This,
Frosty. Yeah, I this is what happens every year. They have no depth and they lose their legs when they get towards the end of the year.
I
So
was gonna say the exact same thing.
yeah,
Like I every year it seems like this defense is looked at as on paper they're one of the better units in the league. And then every single year they come out hot and then they fizzle out near the end of the year because they don't
yeah.
have anybody outside of the big names that everybody knows.
They got
They
11 really, and then it's like you're
Yeah,
asking for
there is
steps.
not a lot of depth.
like a couple injuries and this this defense is near the bottom of the league. Like this,
Yeah.
I don't think the depth is there, and I think that's part of the reason. I think Trevor Lawrence's turnover problem also hurts the defense as well because they're on the field constantly. That contributes to more injuries for them, and then they don't have the depth.
Yeah. I think you guys have talked me a little bit down on the Jaguars. I still have them where I'm at. But
We'll have to
like
get to the status prediction soon and
they're
see.
I
We'll have
think
to
they're still a
continue the
solid team.
conversation there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they still fall into the same range in the AFC. That's sort of where they are. They're not one of the elite teams, but they're also not one of the bottom feeders. They're be in the playoff race. I've got them winning into the playoffs. So
I'm done with the Jaguars. I already spent too much time on them that I wanted to. We still got one team
there's a team
remaining,
you want to talk
gentlemen,
about?
and they're the best team. So realistically, we should spend the most time on them. Real quick, I just want to hear your guys' general thoughts on Houston.
Oh, we're gonna let you
Before
go.
I just want to
I
real quick hear you guys before I get into it.
All right, all right. Um,
Like, do you
well,
have any just any overarching thoughts? If not, hey, step aside and I will gladly step in here. But I was just wondering if you guys really quick before I go on a tangent that if there was anything you wanted to point out.
I think the team will be good. They'll be a top team in the AFC. I think I think there's some question marks I have on the O line a little bit. Like I'm not sure what you're going to get out of Titus Howard as a healthy tackle or Kenyon Green as a healthy guard. So that's some question marks because that's what really hurt them down the end of the year is their O line got hurt and that O line was bad by the end of the year. That was rough to watch. And I think the edge rushers are great, but there's some depth question marks I have, but the secondary and the interior of the D line. That's where I'd put my question marks. The rest of the team, they're really solid. I think they'll be a top tier team in the AFC as everyone expects.
I'll I'll let you spread your Texans propaganda, but there's a player receiver on this team that I feel like we're gonna have
I'll let you guys
an
go
in-depth
ahead.
conversation about.
Yeah, we've been having the Diggs conversation for a little bit now, but honestly, Glover, I don't hate with what like I I I share a lot of I share the same sentiment a lot of what you said. Like uh offensively, like again, we were talking about this the other day. I really do think CJ Stroud is just gonna take another step. They've supplemented again around him even more. Like, so realistically, you think like he should be in MVP talks. I expect him to be in MVP talks. I know it's like it sounds like a Homer-ish thing. I know it does. I can't
Well,
escape that. It's just from what I've seen, there's no reason to think that this guy can't make that jump next year. Like he's an upper echelon guy
yeah.
in
And
my
yeah,
yeah.
we've
Uh
been through this. Like, yeah,
yeah.
he's going to be a top, he'll at worst be a top seven guy. And I mean, they'll compete in the MVP race. We'll see how long. It depends on the
Like
team. But that's part
I
of the MVP,
I'm
right?
saying like I think where the difference is between me and you at least is I expect him to be top five after next season.
I think he'll probably will be top five.
Like I
I'm
would see him
I would
passing
say I was
Herbert.
saying if he has the worst he could fall is seven. Like
Fair.
I think realistically he'll be like Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Stroud. Like that'll realistically be the top five by the end of the year. That wouldn't shock me.
And like they have so much around them. Like this is I've said this to you guys. I've been pushing this. They have the deepest receiving room in the NFL, and
Yeah.
I don't know how many of these guys want to take like a practice squad spot or what, but I'm interested. Like I think the biggest decision for them comes down to Robert Woods. I don't know which way they want to lean in keeping a vet or giving it to a young guy. So you can assume the big three are going to be there: Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. John Mechie is somebody who they invested high on and has shown flashes. Noah Brown they paid this offseason. So that's five. And then Xavier Hutchinson is a young guy who ask any Texans fan and they love Xavier Hutchinson. He's shown lots as a young guy in very limited time. So that's six. Like you're not keeping more than seven or eight. So then you're looking at Ben Skowronek, Robert Woods, Quintus Cephas, Steven
Ben
Sims,
Skowronek,
who's been their kick returner and was massive for them in the divisional round against Baltimore. So
you traded for Ben Skowronek this offseason. Like you gave up
so
a six.
then
Like, you got a
so,
seventh back. You gave up a six to get him.
so there's your seven if you want to do it that, and then you cut Robert Woods and Quintus Cephas. Like Quintus Cephas was
I would.
brought late in camp, but it's just like that's the kind of thing with this receiving core where you're betting like we're just talking about these guys at 7 and 8 who are like three, like fours, threes on most teams. So I like that. Their tight end room. This is the best tight end room that's been in Houston for a while. Dalton Schultz, I know Frosty. I want to hear your Dalton
Yeah.
Schultz real quick because I think he's a top 10 guy.
I think he's a top 10 guy easily. I think his blocking is super underrated. He's very, very underrated as a run blocker, and he's a very good pass catching tight end. I don't think the stats will do it justice just because of how many mouths there are to feed on this offense.
Yeah.
But I'm very 100% confident when I say Dalton Schultz is a top 10 tight end. And I don't really think I think he's in that tier after the guys that are going to be the routine like top three guys, the Kelsey, Kittle, Laporta, and Mark Andrews. I think there's a lot of turnover and turmoil within the next group of guys, and I think Dalton Schultz is in that group.
Yeah, I like Schultz. It's the best tight end Houston's had. Like Deshaun Watson never had any really good tight ends, and it was always a weakness for this team. And Schultz is nothing like world beating. I saw Glover kind of make a little noise when you brought up Mark Andrews, but
Yeah.
we'll
We are not putting those two. I'm not even. We're not putting those two in the same
No,
category.
I didn't put them. I didn't put them in the
okay,
same
I'm
thing.
just making sure.
Those
Just making
four
sure
are a
that
level above. I'll put Kelsey, Kittle, Laporta, and Mark Andrews are
I
the top four.
I would throw Hawkinson into that group. I like TJ.
I could do that. Yeah,
Hawkinson,
I could do that.
so that's the five, and then yeah, after that, I mean, you end up with Dalton Schultz is in there, Trey McBride is in there,
Jake
Dallas
Ferguson.
Goedert's in there, Evan Ingram's in there, Isaiah Likely I think he's talented enough to be in there. Maybe that's my homer pick. He's in that borderline
Jake
tier
Ferguson.
combo
Jake
we
Ferguson's in
mentioned.
there.
if likely can't block right now. So if he can clean that up, then like I like it. But yeah, just like Brevin Jordan finally put it together for this Houston team a little bit last year too. He's somebody I've always believed in, and he finally showed something with competent quarterback play. Cade Stover is somebody that Houston fans are really high on as well. Tight end out of Ohio State, played with CJ. So that's some young. We haven't drafted a tight end like invested that high of a pick in a tight end in a while too. So uh, you're hoping something from him. Glover, you pointed out the O line. It's young. I like the young guys that are there, but yeah, they got decimated with injuries on the O line. Kenyon Green's been like out of the Dick Casario era in Houston. Kenyon Green's been the biggest bust, like by far. Like they have done such a good job drafting. That's just an overall theme with this team. They have drafted so well. They've made every right decision since this regime took over. And Kenyon Green's been like the only like mishap. We'll see what he looks like this year. At this point, he's battling to be a starter, is what the talk is at a camp for him. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Joe Mixon. I'm concerned about Joe Mixon in general. Running backs really weren't like featured in Houston that much. Like they were just an ultra passing team. The talk at a camp is Dameon Pierce is back. So he's not somebody I'm ready to like. I'm still buying stock on Dameon Pierce. Have you guys sold all your Dameon Pierce stock?
Man,
I wouldn't say I've sold all of it.
I put so much stock into him that rookie year, man. I picked him up in fantasy before the season started. I was like, man, this guy's going to be a monster in this offense. He was a monster in that offense. He saved my season. And I made sure to invest in the next year, and he disappointed the crap out of me. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't think Devin Singletary was going to take away snaps from me. He shouldn't have. So I definitely have sold some stock in him, but like not all of it. I'm still holding on to hope.
I think what'll help him too is I think they might try and limit Joe Mixon's snap count because he's getting up there in age. I think it would be smart for them to try and keep him fresher for the playoffs and use Damian Pierce basically as a 1A, 1B in the regular season and then let Joe Mixon take over the backfield in the playoffs.
It was just when Stroud got there and Bobby Slowick got in there, they just completely changed the offense from what it was when Pierce was there. When he was just, it was a bit more of a heavy power run. We're going to run Pierce down your throat. And then last year, in a more passing offense, like Singletary was great out in space and making catches for CJ, right? So Singletary just, he played well and he fit more what we wanted to do. We'll see with Pierce. We'll see with Mixon. I'm not sure what I'm going to be getting out of that running back group, especially with um I'm not sure about the O-line either. Shaq Mason was good. Laramie Tunsil, I will stay saying, is like a top 2, top 3 tackle in the league. He's super solid. Just go watch him against the Browns. And what he did to Myles Garrett. I believe Myles Garrett had 1 pressure and 0 sacks. He completely neutralized them. He's amazing. Any more thoughts on this offense? I don't want to. I feel. Am I rambling, guys? Feel free to cut me off. Is it getting too much here?
We all get our teams, man.
Yeah, we all get to talk about our own teams.
Like I haven't even touched on the
That's it.
defense yet, man. Like it's we're gonna do what we did with
I
Glover.
was
We
I
talked
was
about
in
the
the
offense with the
exact same
Ravens
boat.
forever.
I was in the exact same. I was like, man, I'm going on way too long, and I missed so many points I wanted to mention.
I think I've yapped enough about the offense. Defensively, the D line is so good. Daniil Hunter and Danico Autry coming in to be alongside Will Anderson Jr. is good. Glover, you hit the nail on the head with the depth. Don't know about the depth on just the whole D line in general, to be honest. Like Jerry Hughes and Derek Barnett they can get snaps on the edge, but I don't know. Like it's nothing crazy. Christian Harris is somebody who I'm super high on. I was super high on him, and then people realized how good he was, especially in that wild card game against the Browns. Uh, Derek Stingley Jr. I'll continue to say is one of the best corners in the league as well. What's going on in camp for them is so Jalen Petrie, who widely regarded had a down year. Glover, we had a conversation going into this past season. It was legitimately a debate, Jalen Petrie and Kyle Hamilton. Or Kyle, like who would you take? Like we both were on the opposite sides of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then one
but
went like that, and the
each
other one
player,
went like that.
the gap became really big. But what they're doing with him, they're moving him out of safety, and he's been playing at nickel. So he's gonna be more of that rover, like playing in that role. And they're gonna be having Kalen Bullock, the USC safety now, who's projected to be starting alongside Jimmy Ward and Kamari Lassiter now. After they got drafted, he was like, "This is a nickel guy. This is a nickel guy." He's looking like he's at cornerback too. So changes in the secondary in Houston. That's the big talk of the defense right now.
You did mention this to me earlier. My thought on it, I think Petrie can play the rover role for sure, but they need more safety depth to do it because Jimmy Ward can't stay on the field. He is just, you get 6 games out of him, maybe. That's going to be the issue. If you're moving Jalen Petrie in the rover role, you need more depth. Like Kalen Bullock, I'm not too familiar, but I think he should be a solid piece of the Justin to be a starting safety. But you got to have more depth to be able to make that move. The Ravens are in the similar boat with Kyle Hamilton this year. They lost Geno Stone. They wanted to keep Hamilton in the rover role. Marcus Williams had the injury concerns, so they brought in Jackson to come in and help with some depth. I guess I think the Texans might want to look for a player like that
Yeah.
to
They're
help out with
flexible.
depth.
They're flexible on it because if they bring
Yeah.
Petrie back to safety, then you can roll it. Like they have Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson not projected to be starting right now. Like as right now, these guys are not in the starting lineup. So
Yeah.
like then you could start one of them at corner. You got Desmond King there who could help in the nickel as well if Lassiter, something happens there. So you're making bets on some guys. There is some depth. Aziz Al-Shire is a big time upgrade over Blake Cashman. I like Blake Cashman, but Al-Shire is amazing to me. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts of the Texans. Hopefully it was somewhat concise and not rambly, but I, like let's get into the standings predictions now because I really do think that this team is competing for the 1 seed.
Competing, but I want to see where you have them. But I
Go
don't
ahead.
have them
Go
there
ahead.
yet.
Go ahead, Glover. What do you
You
have?
want me to start?
We're doing the standing predictions now.
Okay.
So
So I'll start, and this is where it's questionable. I've got the Titans in last. I've got them at 3-14. And I'm gonna be honest, this feels low. Like before we went into the year, I went in and I was made sure I double checked on my settings. I remember that I had the Titans pretty low, and I was like, they made a lot of additions. I gave them one extra win that I boosted them up because I felt that was needed because I thought the Chargers are worse than them, so I
So
gave them that
you
win.
had them at 2 wins
I had him at
before?
2-15. I was like, I can't.
When you first told
But
me that, I was like, wow. Because
they've
I
got a tough schedule. They don't have a lot of winnable games. I'm not fully sold on Will Levis yet. He had a good, like you mentioned, he had a really good first game through the four touchdowns, Andrew. But after that, it kind of disappeared. He went 3-6 as a starter. Nothing special. Like they play Chicago, much better team now. The Jets, much better team now. The Packers, the Dolphins, the Colts. I have them splitting with the Colts. That's their only divisional win. But I could see the Colts sweeping them. They play the Bills, they play the Lions. I do have the Patriots stealing a win off them. I could see that going the other way. I have them beating the Chargers. They play the Vikings. I could see them stealing that win. The Texans, I have the Texans sweeping them. I have the Jags sweeping them. They have the Commanders. They play the Bengals too at the end of the year. Like, not a great schedule for a team that finished last in the division last year. Play a lot of tough teams. And I think that's sort of the problem with like I mean they match up with the NFC North over in the NFC. The Lions, the Packers, and the Bears are all really solid teams. And you look at the last place AFC teams, it's the Patriots, which they could beat, and the Bengals. The Bengals got a last place team schedule because they finished last in the AFC North last year. Great for the Bengals. Any other team is like, why are we playing these guys? So and the NFC South is or the AFC South is getting better. The Texans are an elite team. I have the Jags as a playoff team. The Colts will be pushing for a playoff spot too. Not a great schedule, and I'm not fully sold on Will Levis. That's really where my thought is. Also, we didn't bring this up, but the defense will take I think will take a step down, not because of players, but because Mike Vrabel will not be coaching them anymore. That's going to play a factor in this Tennessee Titans team. So yeah, I've got them low. I think if I were to go back and redo my Stanford predictions, I might give them one or two extra wins, maybe, but I can't see many more winnable games for them. Then in third, I do have the Colts. I have them at 9-8, and the Tennessee they're pretty close to the playoff bubble. I really like the Colts, but as I said, I think they're a year away. I think this will be a good year for them to build some chemistry to get used to this team. Then in the offseason, they'll have another pick in the mid-teens, grab another solid impact player, make some more free agency moves, and this team will be ready to go for the next season. I think that's when I'd say they'll be ready to go, and they can afford to take that time because Anthony Richardson was drafted very young. He's still got tons of runway as a quarterback. So I like this future for the Colts. I think in the next 3 years, they'll probably be a team like I could see them surpassing the Jags as a team, surpassing teams like the Browns, and being a really solid contender in the AFC. But just not this year, not quite yet. Then at second place, I do have the Jags. I have them going 12-5. They're the 7th seed. Yeah, I I like the Jags more than you guys do. You did talk me a little bit down on them, but I'd still probably put them in this spot. Like
there's
this is
no
where
I
I
thought there's
yeah.
no chance they go 12 and
12
5.
wins?
There's no chance they go 12 and
Well,
5.
I'll go through it. Like they lose the Dolphins week one, beat the Browns at home, lose the Bills, lose the Texans, beat the Colts, beat the Bears, beat the Patriots, beat the Packers. I have them upsetting the Eagles.
Like beat the Packers, you just said that like that was nothing. Like I like the
I've got them
Packers
beating the
over
Packers at
them.
home, and they lose to the Lions. I have the Texans sweeping them. And then down the stretch when it matters, that's the thing. The Jags start off hot. They always struggle down the stretch. Down the
They
stretch, they
take
play the
bad
Titans.
losses. Like they take bad
Yeah.
losses. Yeah.
But the last 5 games, they play the Titans twice, the Colts, the Raiders, and the Jets. I have them going 5-0 in that stretch when it counts. So
We'll see. They'll
we'll
lose to
see.
bad teams. They lost to Tennessee towards the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll see. Like
And Tennessee
I know
got
I'm higher
better.
on them than you guys are.
Okay,
So
okay. We'll let you continue. We'll let you continue.
that's just where
I
I
know
have.
Frosty's holding back here. Frosty's getting ready. He's looking at his chops.
That's where I've got them. And then you're gonna hate this. I have the Texans. I also have them at 12-5. But I have a lot of 12-5 teams. We've been through this in every divisional preview. I've got like two 12-5 teams in each division. But I've got the Texans there, winning the division. They're the 3 seed. And that's where I think they'll be. I think how they'll get there is up in the air, but I think they'll be the 3 seed behind Baltimore and KC. Uh, so yeah, like they don't have a tough schedule. They have a like for them, it's tough for the rest of the division the way they match up with the other divisions. But like I have them splitting with the Colts, sweeping the Jags, sweeping the Titans. Their losses are to the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Lions, the Packers, and then one to the Colts. Like those are games I could see them winning a couple of those, but like those are tough games. I think like playing the top tier, that's where they're going to be this year. They had an easier schedule last year because they weren't as good. They were a last place team in the division. This year's gonna be a tougher stretch for them. So yeah,
You have the
that's
Jags
right.
beating the Packers and the Packers beating the Texans.
I do. I do. Upsets happen, man. It's unpredictable in the NFL. Results don't always make sense. And hey, I even have the Texans beating the Ravens in week 17. So I didn't have them beating them the Ravens beating them in the playoffs, but that's when it counts.
I in last in the division, I have the Tennessee Titans. I'm not quite as low on them as Logan is. I actually went back and took a win away from them.
Oh.
And I still have them at a higher record than Glover. I have them at 4-13. Um, I think they could win at most like 6 games if everything goes right. Will Levis shows some flashes, but realistically, we've said I think all we need to say about this team. This in an up and coming division, like we've been saying, they're just not up to par in my opinion. Third in the division, I have the Colts at 8-9. I think the defense holds them back. I really do. I have them going 3-3 in the division. I think they sweep the Titans, and I think they get swept by the Texans. I it's a tough the NFC North is a tough division to match up with. It is. There's a lot of games where they would if they were playing the NFC East, they probably have more wins because they get the Giants and the Commanders instead of the Bears or the Vikings. Two teams that I think are better than both the Giants and the Commanders. End of the day, I think this team hovers around 500. I think they could maybe get up to 10 wins. I think I'm on the lower end for the Colts, having them at 8-9, but I think they hover around 500 at the end of the day. Second in the division as the 7 seed, barely making the playoffs in a tiebreaker with the New York Jets is the Jags at 9-8. 12 wins for this team is absurd. I'm going to be completely honest
The
with
thing,
you.
so we still have them in the same spot. My Jags,
I
12-5, 7 seed, 1 win away from missing the playoffs with the Jets.
you have one of the craziest like season
Genuinely.
predictions I've ever. You have the 11-win Jets missing
Yeah.
the playoffs.
I honestly don't know how it happened. My AFC is so like my NFC, it's like it's the 9-8, 8-9 teams, it's the playoffs, the worst team that makes it like the 11-6 Packers are my 7th seed, and then it's the 9-8 Falcons. In the AFC, it's just like the 9-8 Colts are the 10 seed.
I have 5 teams at 9-8 or 8-9.
So that's sort of the thing. I think I don't have a lot of teams in that range because the 10 seed for me is the Colts at 9-8. The 11 seed is the Steelers at 6-11. It takes a serious drop off
You have nobody getting 7 or 8 wins.
in the AFC. In the NFC, I have the Saints at 7-10 and the Seahawks at 8-9. Yeah. I don't know. It's the way the cookie crumbled for my mind when I was going through game by game. That's just how it worked out.
All right. I I think I think the Jags. I honestly I think the Colts could finish ahead of the Jags this year. I think I think I think that's more likely than the Jags getting 12 wins. I'll say that.
I don't think it's crazy that the Colts could finish ahead of the Jags, but I just had them taking those games, man. It's just the way I don't know. I do. I'm putting a little bit of stock into Trevor Lawrence. If this year doesn't pan out, then I'll hop off. I'll let him just sit in the mid forever.
it's hard to put stock into them still, man. Like it's the receiving room got worse, I think. Like
I
I
don't
don't know, it's tough. And this I have them going 6-1 to end the year as well.
Yeah, I've
I
got
have
one
them
five coming
beating
at
the
it.
Texans at home, and then they go on a 5-game win streak and then lose to the Colts in the last game of the season. I could absolutely see the Jags going out and losing 3 of those games. Just just for stupid reasons because Jacksonville loses stupid games.
And you still have them at 9-8, despite with
I
them
still
going
have
six
them at
and
9 and
one.
8.
Okay.
Yeah. I could see them going as low as 6 and 11.
I
Like
can't go that low on them. There's no way, I don't think. They were 9-8 last year, and that was a bad year for them. Like they had so many issues across the board, and they went 9-8. I don't think they can go any worse than like 8-9.
are are they a better team
I don't
than
think they're
last
a
year?
better team, but they're like right on par with I think the way they were last year. I think the defense got better, the O-line got better, the receiver room got
So,
worse.
but you have them at 12 and
So you have
5.
them
So,
getting 3
Yeah, because
wins
I
better
think
while
I
being
think
on
last
par with the team that they were
I'm
last
betting on
year.
the fact that last year was the down year, and this is what they're supposed
they
to
have no
be.
depth, man. They have no depth. It's every year.
I've got about 12 and 5.
No, you're like every year, everyone's like, oh yeah, 11, 12 wins, bang. And then they lose 2 or 3 games towards the end of the year. And then they're all of a sudden they're 9
It's
and 8.
only been the past 2 seasons.
But yeah, that's 2 years. Like that's two
But then the
back-to-back
thing
That is
is,
years.
2/3 of Trevor Lawrence's career.
the other thing
They've
is
plateaued with Lawrence and
Yeah.
just the whole team has plateaued. They need to
the
break
other
through
thing
it.
I will say is after the year he had 2 years ago where they won the playoff game and that it was warranted to bet on this team. Trevor Lawrence had a great year. He only had 8 interceptions. That was his big flaw. He
Yeah,
had
it was.
25
Yeah.
touchdowns,
But
and they won a
is it
playoff game.
again? You're betting on it, so now you're doing it. Like now you're doing it again.
Yeah, I'm doubling down, and I could see it not
It's a
panning
big
out.
year, like you said.
But
It's a
this is
big
the
year.
year. This is it. They have to do it this year.
I I think they squeak into the playoffs. I think they get manhandled in the first round though. I I I also have this team they start out 0 and 4, then they go to 4 and 4, then 4 and 7, then 9 and 7, and then lose the last game. This team is streaky. I think they're gonna be hot and cold all year, which is why I think they could fall as low as 6 and 11.
Yeah.
And then I have the Texans as the 4 seed, but I have them at 12 and 5. They're tied for the 3rd seed and only 1 game behind the 1 seed. I have a bit of a cluster at the top of the AFC. And this I think the Texans are the clear cut cream of the crop in the AFC South right now. Like I don't think it's really a question, to be completely honest. I don't know. I don't think any other team is really close to their level of skill plus production that they showed last year. And I don't think this is conservative, but I have them losing the game to the Packers. I have them dropping a game to the Jags. Games that I could see them winning. I could see this team winning more than 12 games. I think 12 is the number for me because that's I think that's winning every game that they should win and maybe giving them one that is a toss up that they don't win. Like I have them losing to the Jets and the Packers. I think those games could go either way. I think the Texans are a better team than the Jets, but I don't think the Texans are a better team than the Lions, but I haven't beaten the Lions. I think this team this what worries me about the Texans is I think they might play to their competition. If they can stay away from that, I think they're easily a 12-win team, and that might be their floor is a 12-win team.
Yeah. So okay. Let's start with Tennessee. I'm the highest on Tennessee out of all of us. I have them at 5 and 12. I think if you're relatively projecting them to get 3 or 4 wins, I think like they're trying to go in a direction now where like I wouldn't even be surprised if they got upwards of 6 or like 7. Like they've now invested a little bit into Will Levis here. And I mean, look, Will Levis stole them a game at the end of the year. He played 9 games. He's gonna steal you 2 games. So like you could bet on him to maybe steal you 2 games at least, if you don't think he can take a jump. So I've bet 5 and 12, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
I have the Colts at 8 and 9. So I think we're all relatively similar on this Colts team. A lot of variance of what they could do because if the young guys make a jump, like 9 and 8, like we'll see what A-Rich, that's the big storyline with them. So 8 and 9, I'm aligned with Frosty. The Jaguars, 9 and 8. I I could see them going 10 and 7. I really do. But I remembered what I confused. I was talking about Trevor Lawrence's O line has gotten better over the years since he's gotten there, but the receiving room has got worse. It was Joe Burrow I was thinking of, where the O line has gotten better for him, but the receiver quality is getting lower. Just to see and balance it out and how that works, because Lawrence has been generally like he's on the higher end of getting sacks. So 9-8, could see them going 10-7. I don't see them going 12-5, to be honest with you. Uh, Mainly because the Houston Texans are in the division. Uh, it might shock you. I have them at 12-5. I don't know if you guys were thinking a bigger number. Here's why. I think they are gonna not have a good end to the year. I think they could lose four straight. Um, they play the Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs, and Baltimore Ravens all within 10 days in December. So they played those three teams in 10 days. What is this scheduling? They have them playing on Sunday, December 15th, Saturday, December 21st, and then on the Wednesday against Baltimore. Baltimore's going to bully them in week 17 on Christmas because these guys are going to be dead.
I hope so.
That they got 11 days off after that, and I'm hoping they can beat the Titans, but
To be fair,
that's a very tough stretch for them, and I don't think they come out unscathed, or else I generally do think they could win 13, 14 games.
I will say the Ravens have that exact same schedule lineup. Sunday, then Saturday, then Wednesday.
Okay, so maybe that's a bit more balanced than I thought, but regardless, but do you play two
No, we
other
play the
top
Giants and the
teams?
Steelers.
Yeah,
Again, I have the Texans actually winning that game, but I think the Ravens are the better team. That's what I think. It's just
like
the way the
if
records.
I'm hoping because they have a bye before it, so I'm hoping they should get Miami.
You have week 14 by?
Yes.
So do the Ravens. It's literally the exact same like setup here.
Okay, so uh it's the second half of the schedule for Houston is brutal, honestly. They still got Green Bay, Detroit, Dallas all in there. They play Buffalo. Like Houston's got a tough schedule. It's a bit lighter at the start of the year, but yeah, 12-5 just because it's tough, but we'll see what they're made of. But
But I think you're on the money there. I think it's going to be tough for them to they're gonna have to adapt to a tougher schedule. They didn't have that last year.
yeah, part of the challenge.
Yeah.
But it's again, projecting how good these guys can get. Like that's why I'm saying 13, 14 wins. It might be a 11-6. It might be a they probably will be it's you can't really say that they're going to be a top two team next year. Like I think it's possible just because I also think KC generally comes in lower in the regular season anyway. So if Baltimore maybe gets some injuries, I think Houston's like the clear cut number three team is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So like I
Agreed.
think but I could see them being like a four seed if um I don't know if some like if they take some losses.
That's the thing. I think the way to look at it is I think the Ravens, the Texans, and the Chiefs are the top three teams in the AFC. Record may not show it come playoff time. I could see a team like Buffalo, Miami, or Cincy having better records than those three teams.
Yeah.
But it would take quite a bit for me to, regardless of the record, say that any of those three teams the next year are better than those top three teams. Because like we know the Chiefs are gonna have a rough start. Like again, we'll get to that in the next one, but they always have a rough regular season. Everyone doubts them. I'm not gonna bother doubting them this year. I'm just gonna assume they're gonna win the Super Bowl the whole year, and
Yeah.
that's the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, well, Frosty, any final thoughts on the AFC South? Well, it went
Um,
long. This is our longest one, guys.
Oh yeah.
So we'll probably
this is
I think generally when we have a team in the when we have a when we planted our flag, I think
Yeah.
we all yapped a little bit. So but yeah, Frosty, any close us off here.
uh I just I want to see this division succeed. There's so many young quarterbacks in this division. I want to see this division succeed.
Like, I mean, Glover, you're not happy with the AFC North you have now. Like this AFC South in 2, 3 years, especially if like it's all the young quarterbacks across the board. If you like Will Levis, then there's somebody who's good. Like a lot of people like Anthony Richardson. People still think like Trevor Lawrence is a pushing top 10 guy right now. It's not like he's not a good quarterback to have.
It's really a problem with the AFC as a whole. The AFC blows the NFC out of the water right now in terms of talent and depth because Yeah, like
And yet there's one garbage division, the one we haven't talked about yet, and it's with the Chiefs, and
yeah,
they have a rough. They might not do good in the regular season, but their
they have
division stinks. The
division
talent's
stinks.
spread out to the other three,
The division does stink, but they also still have Justin Herbert in that division. And
and they do.
as I don't agree with the pick, you got a Bo Nix, a first round quarterback in that division. And in the AFC East, you've got Tua, Allen, Rodgers, Drake May now coming up. Like the AFC just keeps picking up good players, and it's really
Russell
annoying.
Wilson and Justin Fields now are with it's Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like
Like,
the AFC just keeps picking up talent, and all these divisions are pretty well. That's why my AFC records are so much higher than my NFC ones. It's only because I think the AFC is just a better conference in every sense.
but like then there's a point of it where it's like they're gonna beat up on each other.
They are, yeah. That's where I'm underestimating how much they'll beat up on each other.
All right. Well, I mean, anything else like this? We
I'm
covered.
just I'm just looking at the Jaguars schedule right now. I didn't realize they have one game all season not on a Sunday.
Huh.
The Jaguars play a Monday night football game on in week 3. That's the only game not on a Sunday all year.
It's interesting now because these last 2 years, it's been Jacksonville's getting all these primetime games out of the AFC South, and had
Line them up.
Houston had one or two primetime games last year. They had one, I think,
And they
scheduled, and then
flexed.
they got flexed into a second one. So they originally had one scheduled, and Jacksonville, I'd have to look, but they were in a decent amount.
Yeah.
So now it's interesting. They've kind of flip flop. Like Houston, I'd have to see how many primetime games they have. They
Four.
got a couple, four. There we go. So clearly they know, like everybody, it's a hot product down here in Houston, and based on where this team was 2 years ago, it's it's fantastic to see, honestly. Like that's like you guys don't know what it's been. All right. Like uh just to be from everything that's happened, like it's with like the Deshaun Watson situation, like Bill O'Brien trading away DeAndre Hopkins just because he didn't like him. Like it's
Oh.
been a lot. And somehow it looked like there was no I was in for the long haul, fellas. And then Stroud came in and D'Amico Ryans changed everything, flipped it on its head. And Nick Casario, who that Deshaun Watson deal, my goodness, they made out like bandits on that. Like that's why we're here now. Like that fully reset the whole thing, allowed them to get CJ Stroud as well. Man, oh man. And then the Will Anderson pick. Like I believe we were all together when they traded up, right?
Yeah.
I believe we were all watching
Yeah.
that together. I loved it. I there was rumors heading into the day, and I didn't think it would be true. And Will Anderson was amazing last year as well. So we didn't really talk about how good he was. Like he's like he was defensive rookie of the year caliber last year, and I think he's gonna get 10 sacks, especially with Daniil Hunter opposing him now. Man, oh man. All
Uh,
right. That's where we'll end it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear us talk about more. Long one. I promise we won't be going this long anymore. Anyways, thanks for watching and keep it buzzing.